Good afternoon, buenas tardes, assalamu alaikum, and welcome to this new SCIEF talk session. I'm Gonzalo Rodriguez, the SCIEF General Coordinator of the Center. Today we will talk about Islamic Fintech, neobanks, and digital banking. In the last Dana Standards 2020 Global Islamic Economic Report, which I had the privilege to present for Spain and the Latin American countries 1 week ago, I realized that the word is mentioned 208 times. So I think it's a very hot topic.
Wow. How many words were there in total?
Today, we are going to have the privilege to have two representatives of a new, great, and very interesting project in Europe, Rizq, which is an alternative UK Islamic digital bank. But before I introduce them, let me allow to introduce once again our center for those who are joining us for the very first time. SCIEF is the Saudi Spanish Center for Islamic Economics and Finance. It's Europe's leading center for Islamic economics and finance. The center was launched in 2009. With a mission to be a hub for research, teaching, applying, and promoting Islamic economics and finance among Spanish, Saudis, and international businesses, governments, and future leaders. The center's activities are based on 4 pillars: academic development, international awareness, research, and engaging business community. The center leverages from the experience of its partners, the Islamic Economic Institutes at King Abdulaziz University in Saudi Arabia, and IE Business School. The activities range from developing course materials, thought leadership through producing publications, conducting executive training on contemporary issues, and raising awareness through our think tank series on Islamic finance and the future of alternative financing in business. The center also organizes and sponsors international conferences on Islamic economics and finance in collaboration with other leading global academic institutions. And now let me please introduce our speakers today, Mr. Mushtaq Hussain and Peter Trebelev. Mushtaq Hussain recently joined Rizq as the CEO. Prior to this role, he was the co-founder and CEO of Bayan Payments Ltd, an innovative fintech in Saudi Arabia, providing e-wallet and payment gateway solutions. He has more than 2 decades of experience, and he has held multiple management consulting leadership roles at IBM or Accenture. He's MBA graduate from University of Chicago, Booth School of Business, and Mushtaq has a proven track record of building, scaling, and leading global organizations. Welcome. Marhaba.
Thank you, Gonzalo.
And Peter Trebelev is a business development professional with years of experience in sales and marketing within fintech and neobanking. He has excelled in many of his roles and is now one of the main driving forces behind Rizq customer acquisition successes to date. Peter holds a bachelor degree from the University of Warwick. So welcome, Peter.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
I would like to thank you, first of all, to joining our session today. And I would like to know, maybe you prefer to make like a short presentation of Rizq, and then we can start talking about it. Okay,
yeah,
Peter?
Absolutely. Yeah, sure. I mean, I can talk a little bit about the idea. That's always an exciting part of it, right? How the journey started. And where we are now, before going into a little presentation that we've kind of put together for you guys as well. Yeah, so essentially Rizq was incorporated only about 10 months ago, surprisingly enough. But the idea was born at the end of 2019. Myself, my co-founders, we worked in a challenger bank previously, and we always wanted to create something of our own. But we knew that, there's no point recreating a Revolut or a Monzo or a Starling because they already exist. We felt there's a lot more opportunity in niches. You can't necessarily call 2 billion people a niche as such, but it's something that is a little bit more niche, I guess. Me myself, obviously being a British citizen, having lots of kind of Muslim friends, I've spoken with a lot of them regarding this. And they said, yes, indeed, there is kind of a shortcoming, should we say, with current providers out there in terms of kind of the difficulty in dealing with them, no digital products. And, you know, it shows in the kind of small-ish customer base that they've been able to attract. So we thought, you know, is there a way of creating something that wouldn't make this group of people essentially sacrifice their kind of religious values and ideals and beliefs, and really create something for a community that's been underserved for a very long time. So, you know, we started looking at how we can potentially execute this. We did some market analysis and research. We saw that obviously Islamic finance is growing in terms of total assets under management, about 10% year on year globally. We saw that there's a population increase, obviously, in terms of Muslims living in Europe. And the research just came back positive. So we thought, okay, this seems like the niche to go after. And of course, we need some strong people from the community as well to help us along the way. And I think we've been really lucky and fortunate in finding those people and creating Rizq, which is obviously actually an Islamic word as well for sustenance, as I'm sure a lot of the attendees will know. So that's essentially the start of it. And yeah, 9 months on, we have obviously a fairly you know, strong brand, good traction. We have about 5,000 downloads, over 1,000 actual live customers. The ratings so far in the app stores have been about 4.5 star on average as well, which is terrific. And now we're gearing up to go into a crowdfund and kind of really step into the next stages of growth and development. And that's where I guess Mushtaq comes in, and probably a good time to hand over for his little intro as well.
Thank you, Peter. So my name is Mushtaq. I think Gonzalez already gave a very nice introduction about my background. So I just landed in UK a couple of days ago and started with Rizq today. My background, last 2 years, couple of years in Saudi. The first, we were actually the second fintech licensed in Saudi. So I was the co-founder and chief operating officer for Bayan Pay. And we have scaled Bayan Pay quite significantly in the last 2 years. When I left, we had about 70,000 customers in Bayan Pay. I would use the same journey experience within the payments in Saudi to the UK for Rizq. And we will talk about a little bit more in detail in terms of what Rizq is planning to do, what's the, you know, what's our niche areas, and how Islamic finance is really going around in the UK. So over to you, Peter. Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that leads us on to the first presentation of the day. Gonzalo, if I'm allowed to share my screen, right?
Please.
Okay. Okay, here it is. So this is a teaser deck, as we've called it, but essentially it's just a presentation that gives a high-level overview of you know, what it is that we're doing. So yeah, always have to start with the problem, which I guess I kind of outlined to an extent, but essentially the problem at the core of it is that banks have always tried to sell to us. They've had our information, but they've always used that information for self-gain a lot of the times. And obviously in Islam, that's not appropriate. So, and for me personally, I think that's also, you know, a great benefit of being involved in this bank is the kind of ethical nature of it, and being able to kind of, you know, like I said, create something for a community that's been underserved in their own kind of in line with their own values. So yeah, the research had found that Muslims are indeed craving an institution which would essentially honor the you know, the values that they have in order to have otherworldly success. So that's what we're trying to create. So Rizq is Europe's first fully digital Islamic challenger bank. And by fully digital, we mean both web and applications. So we've got Android and iOS. And we're a personal, seamless digital Islamic banking experience, which appreciates a Muslim's core beliefs and value system. So again, speaking of our values, experience in terms of crafting experience for our customers, creating meaningful connections with our customers, but also with, you know, between kind of the partners that we work with and the customers that we have. driving value. Again, you can't build a successful business without providing some sort of consistent customer value. So that's very important, as well as transparency and creating ethical standards that the whole organization will adhere to. And obviously we have, a mufti and kind of governance, in order to make sure that, we're hitting that target. In terms of what we have at the moment, it's the current account. This is how the debit card looks. So we have a fair few debit cards out there already, but we are just holding back on the mass kind of release because we're crowdfunding at the moment. And we just want to have the confidence, I guess, that we can serve the 1,000+ customers, because once we release these cards, the costs really start stacking up. And then we're also thinking of creating a premium account, and that's coming out in around about a year. Some of the other things, I guess, that we're going to have, or that we already have at launch are, as I mentioned, the digital onboarding. So you can essentially create an account throughout the app in under 10 minutes. You don't need to go to a branch. We've got the mobile apps, online banking, which again is a USP. And not many competitors have this at all, but we found that especially the older generation values this quite a lot. Then we also have obviously remittances, another big focus for us, because as we know, a lot of UK kind of residents, being Muslim, send money back home, and expats working here send money back home, as well as just more standard, I guess, features like contactless and creating a virtual card within the application, and automating zakat and sadaqah is another big thing that we're working on. We haven't quite got there yet, but it is going to be rolled out in the next version of the application. And this is again something where, kind of linking back to the solving pains and creating value, is something that obviously is a bit of a headache, but something that you need to, I guess, adhere to, and you want to adhere to. So we try and simplify that by working with some zakat partners and kind of try and calculate it for you as well. So that's some things to look forward to. This is essentially how it looks like on the App Store. You do have to be a UK resident to use it at the moment. So I'm sorry if we do have any guests from overseas, but you'll just have to wait a little bit longer. And then this is how the application actually looks like on the inside, and the online banking portal as well. So Mushtaq is now going to speak a little bit more on our plans for the future and how we're going to build out the ecosystem.
Thank you, Peter, and thanks everyone. So I guess you would have got an idea of what we are trying to achieve with the consumer banking. What we are also trying to do, apart from the consumer, we are also trying to bring the merchants into the equation. I always felt that the Islamic banking is kind of unreachable or not reachable for the Muslim merchants here. When we have a large number of small and medium scale merchants in UK, and a lot of them doesn't even get decent banking. So with Rizq, we also aim to target those Muslim merchants and ethical, people who believe in ethical banking merchants, to become our customers. So one of our core value propositions is, apart from being Sharia compliant, we will also be ethical, right? So RiskPay kind of covers, apart from the banking, RiskPay covers what we can do for them. So RiskPay will bring two things. One is the POS to accept the payments at the merchant stores, and the second one is the e-commerce, because as you know, with the COVID, e-commerce has just fast-tracked all the businesses in UK and worldwide. So the payment gateway we will also release a payment gateway middle of next year, which will also allow the Muslim merchants to procure or to do transactions online. And then what it eventually helps Rizq is basically to build an ecosystem for a merchant, which the banks have, I would say the banks hasn't done it yet, or they have failed doing so. What we are trying to give them is a full end-to-end service of a bank account plus a payment service, where they can collect the money and also send the money and do all their, settlements, payments, etc., from the same one single place, which is basically the Rizq account, Rizq business account. So we are aiming to launch by middle of next year, sometime end of Q2 next year. Then Peter, if you scroll down a little bit, and then talking about the Islamic landscape. This is the question you get all the time, like why Islamic banking? How is it there in the UK, etc. So if you look at it, Rizq is actually the only mobile and online new generation Islamic bank in the UK. There are a few more fintechs which have started in the UK, if you like, the likes of Eilders, Wahed, etc. They are all catering into the investment side, whereas Rizq, we always wanted to get to the consumers and the businesses. Hence, we are focusing on the Islamic bank rather than the investment side. There are some traditional Islamic banks in the UK, the likes of Al Rayyan, UBL, etc. Gatehouse Bank calls themselves a new generation Islamic bank, but I haven't seen them much gaining much traction in the UK. The other thing is there are some newer banks who have also taken the same concept, like Money Mint, Inshania, etc. But I think they haven't launched yet, so I don't actually know where they are in terms of their launches. But currently, we have a very nice. We already launched the application. We have a really nice roadmap what we want to do in the next year or so, which will bring Rizq at the prime focus for Islamic banking in the UK. So Peter, next slide. Thank you. In terms of the market positioning with respect to the conventional banks, the new neobanks and the existing Islamic banks, you can see Rizq is kind of nicely positioned in terms of having that mobile app and the web application for catering to the whole variety of the segments. If you look at, I don't know whether you have done any Islamic banking in the UK. Al Rayyan Bank used to be called as Islamic Bank of Britain. And I wanted to do banking back about 6-7 years ago. It was really difficult to do any Islamic banking in the UK back in those days. HSBC, for example, used to have an Amana account, which I guess they have stopped now. So there is, in the mainstream branches, banks, you can see like Monzo is struggling. Starling Bank is doing fantastically well. And then you have the traditional banks like the HSBC, Barclays, NatWest, they all are there. The good thing about us is we already launched with the web and the mobile app, and Revolut, if you know, was only on the mobile app. Now they are going into the web as well. So we believe we are in the right direction, having seen that the same thing other movers are going to. So so that's where, in terms of Rizq is positioned in the UK market. I think that brings us to the end of the slide. So it's a very exciting area for us, and I'm really super excited to be here. Coming from Saudi, I've been living in Saudi for the last 8 years. So I'm back in the UK now, and in Saudi, more or less everybody follows the Sharia banking exceptions. There are hardly few banks which doesn't follow the Sharia, but more or less everybody has the Sharia. So it's good, and it's very great to see bringing the Islamic bank to the UK and making it more popular and adaptive. And adoption is the key, obviously, here. So it will be great for us to scale Rizq and take it to the next level. I'm super excited, by the way. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Mushtaq. So, but your aim is to be a European bank or just a UK bank?
European, definitely. I mean, there's not enough, scope in the UK alone. There's about 3 million Muslims in the UK, and from that, the total addressable market is probably about half, bearing in mind, people are too old, too young to use this. So we are definitely moving into Europe next year.
Okay. It's very interesting. I have seen a question from Mr. Juan Antonio Castro. We're very lucky because one person of our audience is Mr. Juan Antonio Castro, which is the former Triodos Bank vice president. Triodos Bank is maybe the leading ethical bank in Europe. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I had the privilege also to be one of the lawyers of the bank in Spain. And maybe, Juan Antonio, if you can join us and show us, because I remember that the bank make a break even in like 2 or 3 years, right? It was like that.
2 years and a half.
In 2 years and a half. And it was an amazing experience because it was a real, I think it's the first time where a new bank get such attraction in a country of Europe. If you want to tell us something about this experience.
Well, just a little bit. I don't want to take the time of risk.
Feel free. If you can tell us how you did it in 2.5 years.
Well, basically, the market society was really hungry to have banking with values. That was big. There was nothing like that in Spain. So basically, did just to understand and to answer to the market on one hand, and on the other, we were just very strict with our sticking to the to transparency, loyalty, and honesty, and working very hard in bringing a community. It was more like customers, bank customers. They were a community of a process of changing society with banking and values. That was basically, I guess, our secret for success, our magic. I send, but just not to again. I feel like odd taking not my time, but I would like to know. I'm so glad and excited about learning of your experience and what you are doing there. So, question is, I have two questions. One is, do you think the Rizq proposition is also valid for non-Muslim customers?
This is a good question, and one that has come up a lot because there's obviously similarities, but the way Mushtaq and I actually discussed this question before jumping on this call because we knew it was going to come up again. So we always do revisit this one, but I think the way I'm thinking about it anyway is that we have to be focused to an extent on one group. Otherwise, we run the risk of not kind of hitting any of those groups, if you know what I mean. So there are obviously differences in terms of the tone of voice that we use, some of the features that we're looking to roll out. Ethical bankers might be confused on what zakat is, for example, or what a Qibla compass is, for example, when we start rolling those things out. And kind of the social media content that we put out, the things that we celebrate, all of those have to be kind of aligned in order to really strike a chord with one group. If we try and satisfy a number of groups, we might just not satisfy anyone at all. That's my thinking about it.
Well, it makes sense.
Talking about clients, do you think your proposition will attract different clients that now are non-bank or are looking for something different that doesn't exist? Maybe young people, young customers, or
Yeah, absolutely. So what we've seen so far, we've identified about 6 different kind of segments within this market that we're really targeting. So a couple of those have been identified as maybe not rewarding as the others in terms of ease of attraction. So the ones that have converted the best are university students, young professionals, as well as we're also looking to target pre-university students even, because even though you can't open an account with us until you're 18, once someone does open an account, usually the kind of lifespan of that customer is about 15 years, or it used to be a few years ago. Now with digital banks, there's a bit more switchover, and obviously the lifetime value of that customer is really is quite huge. The other thing is, because it is a high-tech product to an extent, we have seen that the adoption for anyone over really 35, 40, 40 plus is it drops quite significantly. So that's good. It's a learning. Our approach is a fast fail one, which is essentially, we go in without thinking that we know everything, because this is a different product that hasn't necessarily existed, and therefore there is no proven concepts and way of marketing it. And as we do all of these little exercises and we try, one channel and another, and kind of try this group and that group, we start learning a lot of things, and then we kind of double down and triple down on the things that work really in terms of budget.
I think there is a question, Muhammad Idris. You want to, you must do, the sound is off. Your sound is off.
Yes, hello to everyone. Thank you to the organizers, Saudi Spanish Center for Islamic Finance, and having an online session for this important area. I'm representing Islamic Chamber of Commerce, which is based in Karachi, Pakistan. In fact, our Secretary General, Mr. Yusuf Hassan Khallawi, told me to join this session. He is our Secretary General based in Jeddah. So Islamic Chamber of Commerce is also working on the Islamic banking, and we are trying to establish banks in sub-Saharan African countries like Chad, Mauritania, Senegal, in these far East African countries. So my question is this model of Rizq bank is replicable to African countries as well or not? And my second question is, does this bank has branches or it is working only online through the system only? And in Islamic banking, we have sort of products such as home financing, car financing, and financing businesses, etc. So how does the bank has Islamic financing in each and every aspect of the financing, or does it only contain to retail banking only? Thank you.
Thank you, Mohammed.
So Peter, I would answer that. So thank you, Mohammed, for the question. Great question. We haven't actually started financing yet. So currently, what we have is only the retail banking. We don't issue any credit at the moment as well. We are looking. Our next step is to look at the payments, which obviously is Sharia compliant anyway. What we would do as a next step is potentially partner with those or Sharia compliant companies to offer financing to our customers. We may not do the financing straight away to begin with, but we would want to partner with those Sharia compliant companies which can do the financing for our Sharia conscious customers, if that answers your question.
Yeah, and in terms of setting up something similar in East Africa, I haven't researched it enough to kind of go into great detail, but I would be fairly confident in saying, especially as there is a fintech revolution happening in Africa at the moment as well, you need providers essentially that can give you the infrastructure, and the UK is very well placed in terms of these providers being very easily acceptable and accessible. Sorry, there being a lot of them, fairly affordable, and the uptime was good and all those things. But having read about Africa a little bit and knowing what's going on there, I think you wouldn't have too much of a problem of creating some sort of a challenger bank there as well, and making it Sharia compliant.
And regarding to replicate the project, you are showing this project as Islamic, right? Sharia compliant. Do you think there is a real niche for Islamic banking in Europe? Or what are the countries, the key countries in your opinion, in Europe? And also, another question is, the word Islamic in Europe can be an issue, as you know. So it could be probably, how are you going to approach the Islamic label to the general public? I mean, because maybe there is a possible integration between ethical banking and Islamic banking. This is a hot question in the industry too.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, to answer the first one in terms of which countries we're looking at. So obviously, we've done research and figured out which ones have the largest Muslim population. So those would be the likes of France, that have about 9%, I believe, out of their 65 million or so. Then there's Germany, Spain, and the Nordics as well, so Sweden, Norway, those countries. I think those are the ones that we're focusing on the most. Belgium as well to an extent, and Austria. There is also the kind of, these are the ones that we've chosen as the ones to explore, and now we're really diving down and kind of diving deeper in terms of figuring out where there is maybe the least amount of cultural difference, because that's a factor, where rolling out is easier, and where the go-to-market kind of strategy will work the best potentially, and where we have some sort of connections and maybe routes available already from existing investors, for example. So all of these things do have to be considered. In terms of the licensing, it's not too difficult because we can work in the European Economic Area under our current setup, should we say, and framework. But if we are to go anywhere further, that's when we'd need to get separate approvals. So Mushtaq, if you want to add anything to that.
No, I think you covered it pretty well, Peter. Thank you. Zalwas, to answer your question, it's Islamic. We talk about this almost every other day, to be honest. But it's not just Islamic. We also want to put it as ethical, value-based banking, etc. But if you just put, it will dilute the whole value proposition if you put either one of those, because you cannot be, for example, Islamic and non-Sharia compliant, for example, or you cannot be not Sharia compliant and not value-based. So they all kind of go hand in hand. So in order to appeal a different aspect gets appealed to different people. So for example, for Muslims, they are probably looking at the Sharia compliant, but more and more people are looking at the value banking side of it nowadays. So when we go to Europe, for example, maybe we will have to tweak it a little bit, where depending on which part of the Europe you're in. For example, in France, maybe we will just talk about value banking, etc. Whereas it might be more, if we go to Germany, maybe it will be more on the Sharia compliant part, etc. I mean, we'll have to fine tune the marketing messages depending on where we go.
Yeah, this is a question because what I have personally experienced in my daily work at the Islamic Center at IE is that when you explain students, when I explain to the audience or to my students at IE, what is about Islamic finance, everybody agree that it's a better system. It's not that. They understand. But when you just say, I'm working in Islamic finance, they say, what is that? What is Islamic? What are you talking about? So sometimes you waste a lot of time explaining things. And so I personally don't have an answer for that. I'm not sure what I would do, but this is an issue: is if the Islamic label is an advantage or not, or we can keep it or not. I don't know. Maybe it's better to talk about what we are doing instead of what we are calling it. But it's a difficult question. We have Juan Antonio. You have raised your hand.
Writing a comment. It's about. I have a question. I have been involved in some discussion about introducing digital Islamic banking in Spain. And the major question, there are two questions in order to talk about the viability. One is, do we have enough market share? That will be enough market size, I will say. And the second question is, how the Islamic community will adopt the digital Islamic banking? Which proportion of that community, so we can have a clear view on the business case. So what I would like to know is what do you think about that? What is your understanding according to your experience, current experience, and so forth?
Mushtaq, do you want me to take that?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
Carry on.
So in terms of the addressable market, like I said, the UK is just the start. There's about 3 million Muslims here. In the European Economic Area, it's about 25 to 30 million. EU, about 45 million. And then obviously, we get into the billions post that. Now, in terms of, because I can't speak of our 5-year plan vividly and clearly just yet, because we still need to figure out, where we're going in Europe first before making larger international moves. However, I know that by building a strong brand in the fintech capital of the world, and also the Islamic finance capital of the Western world, we should have enough bandwidth and sort of support in terms of generating traction to be able to essentially go to almost any country if we execute well here, and be that through partnerships or potentially buying a licensed entity there, or which country it is. I can't speak of that just yet, but as these opportunities arise, we'll look at them. So yeah, hopefully that answers your questions. And I'm seeing a lot more questions here in the chat as well.
Yes. Habib has asked, if you're not financing, what are your revenue sources?
Sure. So we have a fair few actually, and we think we've been quite innovative in some of them. But just to name the obvious ones, so there's interchange, which is basically a percentage on the value of the transaction that goes through every card. There's remittances, so again, obviously catering to a lot of Muslims that will be sending money back home to Pakistan, India. They account for a lot of the remittance in the UK, so that's a big revenue stream. Then we've got things like we mentioned, obviously, the payment gateway and the business banking that's being rolled out next year, as well as the premium account, which again we're looking at charging for as well. And then we also have some innovative things like card partners, which essentially are partners that get some advertising via our debit cards. So when we send out debit cards to customers, there could be some kind of logos and flyers potentially of people that that we work with, like retailers that we work with for cashback, for example, or charities that we work with for zakat, for example, as another example. And yeah, lastly, actually charities themselves as well. We take a small marketing fee, should we say, for featuring them within our app. It was a tricky one because, on the one hand, it doesn't seem very ethical. On the other hand, it does cost a lot to develop these things, and we have to offset it somehow. And we know that we can attract many donors for these charities. So yeah, those are just some of the revenue streams that pop to mind straight away, but I might have missed a few.
But who are the investors now?
We have a group of about 20 to 25 angel investors that did a pre-seed round with us. That was about 365K, which for a neobank is not a lot, if I'm honest. And we've done all that we can with that. We've made that money count, and now we're going into a crowd fund in January. And we're actually having conversations with a number of angel investors who are looking to support us before that crowd fund. The way crowdfunding works is you have to have like some of the money pre-committed before you go on, so that the campaign looks like it has 30, 40, 50% on day one, and then the crowd jumps on board as well. So perfect.
But so there is any financial institution behind?
No financial institution as such, no.
That's important. Okay, very cool. And there's another question. Does Rizq has physical branches in UK, or it is providing online banking only?
No, we are only a digital bank, so we provide only mobile app and web interfaces for banking. It's no brick and mortar. Actually, if you look at the traditional banks, most of them are actually shutting down the branches itself. The place where I live here, there were 3 HSBC. Now there is only 1. All of them shut down in the last 6 months. So the number of retail branches are actually going down.
In Spain, the process is exactly the same. They are closing all the branches. So banking itself is changing. So I think your model has absolutely sense. Okay, and I have another question. What could be the main Sharia concerns in a new neobank? I mean, you have talked, for example, about possible alliance or the funds. So do you identify any risks in that term? Do you understand my question?
So you're talking about the risks in terms of the Sharia compliance?
Yeah, I mean, because could be some concerns in terms of who are behind the bank, who are going to be your partners. Maybe if you are going to work with another financial institution who is not Sharia compliant, so it's going to be a Sharia board or
Yeah. So we have so Peter, if you allow me. So if we have a Sharia advisor on board, whose primary responsibility is to make sure that all our products and portfolio is Sharia compliant. The second main thing is we are currently offering only bank accounts with a debit card, which means there is not much room left to speculate whether it's Sharia or compliant or not. The third thing we are going to do straight away is once we have our business accounts and the payment ecosystem set up, so which is mainly the point of sale and the e-commerce payment gateway. This is again, it's Sharia compliant because it's only payment. So these are the key focus, and remittance obviously is Sharia compliant because there is no interest, there is no financing involved. However, when we actually expand into the financing, whether it's car financing or home financing, etc., which is I think end of kind of Q3 2021, then we will have to have a stronger Sharia compliance review every time we launch any product, or we go with the partner, and we obviously have to have the Sharia compliance certificate for that product from the partner. But we, at the moment, what we believe is we won't go with somebody who is not Sharia compliant. So there are a number of financing companies who are Sharia compliant. So it's their responsibility to make their product and offering is Sharia compliant as opposed to us. So when we sign up, then obviously they have to be Sharia compliant because we will push them to be Sharia compliant to get onto our portfolio of products.
Okay. And you will have a Sharia board?
We have a Sharia advisor on the board, yes. Advisor
on the board, okay. Perfect. And there's another question of Juan Antonio. He said, what can you say about the technology behind Rizq? It is all based on market platform like Think or FinLab or proprietary?
Sure.
Very technical.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not public.
It's Peter, yeah.
Yes, it's a good question. So because we have wanted to get to market on a bootstrap budget, let me back up a little bit. So what you see with a number of challenger banks that are now kind of established is that they used to raise, insane amounts of money on their pre-seed and seed, could be millions, build out all of the proprietary technology, connect to all of the providers like the issuer and the processor and the card manufacturer and FX provider, and pay setup fees of probably about 50K to each one of those. And it just didn't seem like the way to go, because you spend a lot of money to prove a concept essentially, and you don't even necessarily know that it's worth spending that money, and at the end of it you don't even have any customers, you just have your app and it's all ready to go. But what we've done is we've essentially used kind of a similar provider to FinLeap or Temenos is another example, which basically give you the ability to set up really cheaply and effectively, and risk-free to an extent as well, to get to market, prove the concept, prove that you can get some customers and transactions, and then raise at a better valuation, I guess, to an extent, in order to bring all of that technology in-house and kind of build out from there. So yeah, the MVP is not proprietary, but the plan is to bring everything in-house after this raise.
Okay, thank you. I think this answered the question, right, Juan Antonio?
Yeah, yes.
Perfect.
Thank you.
But
talking about the
can I just add? I think Juan Antonio, we are also building Rizq Labs, which means our technology might be available for white label for Islamic neobanks in the future. So if you are, for example, a neobank building up Islamic financial products in, let's say, Spain or in Italy, you might be able to white label our platform to implement it there, which technically reduces your time to go to market fairly by about maybe, I mean, our assumption is it should go down by about 60–70%. You just have to configure your Islamic product. This platform will take care of the Sharia compliance, etc., etc. So that's another thing we are doing in parallel along to Rizq. It will be called Rizq Labs.
Oh,
Okay.
wonderful.
It sounds like a proposition, Juan Antonio.
Yeah, it could well be. But yeah, so
all listening, all listening.
Yeah, this is another revenue stream actually, which we feel can help us reach profitability much sooner. And if we already have all of this technology, why not share it with people that are coming to market as well and want to prove their concept quickly and effectively.
And what about the problem with the Brexit to enter in the European continental market?
Yeah, have a never-ending problem that there's still no clarity, I think, as well. But the provider that we work with, they're called Railsbank. It's not a big secret, I guess. So we at the moment are an EMD, which is electronic money distributor. So we're an agent of theirs, and they have all the necessary preparation, I guess, in order to deal with whatever the outcome, essentially.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, talking about the future, one question that I think is interesting, and we're saying that the world is changing and the pandemic has increased this change and speeding all this process. And how drastically do you expect the banking industry to change in the next 5 years? How do you see the banking industry in the next 5 years? But what I see is in my neighborhood, as I told you, all branches are closing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mushtaq, if you want to start on that one.
Yeah, I can start. Thank you. So the banks have started to work on the digital, which is good news. They have been, some of the banks has been actually, the traditional banks have been working on the digital, but the challenge they have is most of the banks have got very federated backends. So it takes them time to put the plasters on all of their backends in order to work it seamlessly at the front end. So some banks are faster than others, obviously. So they have been trying to become digital for some time, and COVID has now forced them to go digital. Otherwise, they will just die, right? That's why you are seeing more and more retail branches being shut down, more and more services being offered online, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So all this is happening now. But however, I think the banks will continue to do the digital transformation, which I think, by the pace of, I was amazed by some of the banks, how slow they are in terms of rolling out products and portfolio and digital transformation internal and externally to their customers. So I think they'll continue. They're not going to finish it quickly, but I think they'll continue for maybe another 6 months to 8 months before they actually fully digital. So you will see a lot of transformation, and some of the banks have also taken initiatives to even change their core banking, etc., do a full-blown migration, which will support them with the digital offerings, etc. So you can see a clear roadmap for the banks building up to do the digital transformation. And it's going to take maybe some banks might do it quicker, maybe 2 years to 5 years in order for them to be fully transformed digitally. But us as Rizq, we are anyway a digital bank. So we don't have those typical challenges you would face with those incumbents. And then hence we are in a better place to be, if you ask me. But it's gonna, I think you will see a lot of transformation happening in the next 2 to 3 years within the traditional banks itself with lesser stores, etc. One thing I've noticed is even though they are saying my retail branches are closed, they are not serving the digital customers as quickly and efficiently as they should be. For example, my bank takes maybe a bit longer to serve me, blaming on the COVID, saying all our customer care agents are busy, for example. But that cannot continue for a longer time. Maybe people will be okay for some time because of COVID, but as the moment the COVID is finished, they will expect the same level of service as before, or maybe a better level of service as before. And then if you can't do that service over the digital channels, I think the banks will kind of face the brunt of the people.
Yeah. Okay, there was, yeah, go on, please.
No, I was just going to say in terms of COVID more generally, I think it's maybe quite interesting for people to know
sure.
what it's like to launch a startup during a global pandemic, and some of the challenges that we face there as well. But some of, I guess, the silver linings that I see hopefully as well for later down the line. So yeah, obviously closing investment and dealing with people getting cold feet is one thing. Then there's the aspect of, well, Mushtaq says obviously banks blame everything on COVID, but I don't want to do that. But yeah, some suppliers taking longer than necessary because obviously they're changing their modes of working and going remote. Obviously startup very dynamic nature, but having everyone working from home and trying to share screens and scheduling calls, again, it's something that we're not very used to. So it's been a really interesting challenge, and I think for everyone, obviously, on this planet, pretty much, but especially for a young startup that's just been kind of wanting to come to market for a long time, but hasn't been able to, be it for regulators, taking longer than they need, they usually do, or some other things that are outside of our control. But I think generally with every economic downturn, there's short-term losers, but there's also long-term winners, and we've seen that during the 2008 downturn, for example. A lot of unicorns were launched back then, and I think companies in the inception stage could actually do quite well, because we don't have huge customer numbers yet to kind of support, and huge outgoings. So we've kind of made sure that everything is very tight and compact and together before kind of going out in 2021, hopefully with a bang and kind of without COVID at the same time. So yeah.
And how many customers do you expect to have in 1 year? I don't know if you tell us before. Next year, ideally, what's your target?
Sure. I think our target is about 25 to 30,000 by the end of the next year. And it would be good going. It will be about half the customer base of our Rayon, so I'll be very pleased if we hit that.
Okay. Very good. Mm-hmm. And okay, we have a couple of questions here. What are your marketing channels and overall strategy do you have on BPM?
Sure. Yeah, happy to speak a little bit about the marketing. I actually have a slide that I can show you here. It just talks about some of the marketing activities that we're carrying out. I didn't think I'd go into this, but now that the question has come up, I might as well. So yeah, I did touch upon this a little bit already, but essentially the approach is a fast fail approach. So we look at, we try a lot of things, we see what works and what doesn't work. So some of the conventional things, the traditional channels, if you want to call them that, as well as some innovative ones, which, we just kind of sat around the table and thought what could potentially catch on and become viral. So I think something like a end of year podcast series with some influencers talking about their lifestyle and how they manage, their money and charity. So, we're looking, influencers so far have worked quite well. Instagram, Facebook, all of those kind of paid promotions. We got quite, I don't want to say lucky because it was an initiative, but one of the things that Sky ran during COVID was a SME grant kind of scheme, which we enrolled into, and we got £10,000 worth of free kind of advertising credit on TV. So we created a little video campaign as well and put that out there, which was quite exciting because obviously we qualified and we weren't expecting that. And yeah, we work with student ambassadors on campuses. We work with partners as well, so we're hoping that the charities will promote us in turn for us featuring them within the applications, and just kind of using that whole ecosystem that we're trying to build for not just revenue but also customers. Okay,
and just the last two questions. Ismalia asked to tell a little bit more about the crowdfunding you're planning and what's the size and use of funds.
Sure, happy to. So the crowdfund is going to be launched on Crowdcube. We're expecting about mid-January, maybe end of January. But at the moment, we're speaking with angels for kind of the private part of that crowdfund. It is a better valuation as well than what we will have at the crowdfund. So if anyone's interested, then reach out to me or Mushtaq on LinkedIn, and we'd gladly have a call and discuss our plans and answer any questions you might have. The official size of the round is 750K. But we are projecting that we should overfund that by some distance. Yeah, I think that's enough information. If you want anything else, you can reach out to myself and Mushtaq.
I think Talal is asking the question, saying the PPM. Yeah, we do have the investment deck for the people who would be interested in investing in Rizq. But as Peter rightly said, we are looking at close to, he said £750,000. So we are looking at about $1 million as an initial, and then we will do the crowdfunding as well. So if anyone's interested, yeah, feel free to connect to us either on LinkedIn or send us an email. No problem at all.
Okay, sure. Thank you. And maybe the last one, what is the legal status of Rizq Bank in UK? How can one open an account in Rizq and how to deposit money?
Yeah, happy to answer that one as well. So like I said, we're an EMD, electronic money distributor. We are an agent of PairNet, which is an EMI, electronic money institution. So that's the way in which we operate, and we can basically do the same things as an EMI, but we just don't bear the legal responsibilities. But we are planning on becoming an EMI next year as well, as soon as the crowdfund is over. And how you can open an account? Well, you go into the App Store, well, Play Store or App Store, depending on what you use. Download Rizq, and in about 8 minutes, you should be able to create an account from the comfort of your home. And then, yeah, you can deposit money through the app as well and start using your virtual cards. Like I said, the debit cards, the physical debit cards, we're not releasing just yet, even though I have one. But we can't make them public just yet because that's big costs racking up straight away.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if there is no more questions. We are just on time. So I think we have learned a lot about this new project. I have personally, I think that it has a lot of sense, and I hope it's gonna be great, and all the best, okay, for the future, and I hope to meet you personally in the coming months after this horrible pandemic.
Yeah.
Okay, in Spain or in Madrid, in Jeddah, it's your home. And thank you very much for your time and for all the questions and all the audience too. Okay.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for hosting us. It's been a real pleasure, and some really good, insightful questions there as well, which challenges to an extent, but hopefully you got something out of it.
Okay, Mushtaq, thank you.
Thank you.
Hope to see you soon. Okay.
All right. Thanks so much. I think Mushtaq has left his email there, so yeah, if anyone has any more questions or want to find out more about the crowdfund, then please get in touch.
Okay, we are in touch.
All
okay,
right.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yes.